Welcome to It's Not What You Think with Mordy Levine, where we get to meet and talk to spiritual teachers from around the world. Our guests are from all walks of life, and we hear about how they got into spirituality and how they navigate the world we all live in. This is episode 8, recorded on April 20th, 2021. My guest today is Bonnie Szumski, an outstanding Iyengar yoga instructor in San Diego. Bonnie also teaches yogic philosophy. We talked about how she coped when her son passed away in 2014, and how that has changed her life. It was heartwarming and inspiring. It's Not What You Think podcast is available on all streaming platforms, so please like, comment, share, or subscribe on your favorite platform. That support is enough to continue to allow us to produce this show. Our interviews are with people who may have opinions different from yours or mine, so while we keep an open mind, just remember, it's not what you think. Bonnie Szumski is an outstanding Iyengar yoga instructor in San Diego. How do I know? Because I have taken her classes myself. The quality and precision of the Iyengar method and teaching captivated her, and she has devoted her practice to Mr. Iyengar's teachings. She received her certification in 2017, completed the 3-year Iyengar Yoga Therapeutics program. They don't have something on the internet where you could just knock it off in a weekend? They're working on that. Bonnie is also a surfer, which is her true spiritual practice, and a prolific and well-known writer, having written dozens of books for young adults. She also studies sacred chant with Gitte Bechard of Toronto, Canada. So, hi, Bonnie. Welcome to It's Not What You Think. How was your week? How was your week? Another week in the pandemic.
Busy already.
Busy is good. Busy is good. You're not busy. I get when I'm not busy, I get into trouble. I think I'm happier. I just end up getting into trouble.
Really?
So
well.
yeah, in my mind. When there's a void, that's when the mind goes, lack of focus. So how did you find yoga, meditation? What came first for you?
Oh, good point. Well, I'd always had a calling for philosophy from the time I was a young girl, and did that much on my own. So that led me more to, I guess, the idea that there was another way of dealing with the world than the way I grew up, which was very chaotic. I grew up in a very chaotic household. So just reading philosophy was very, just allowed me to see, there's another way to do life than this way. So I'd have to say that was the very early bit of it.
How old were you? And do you remember how old?
I was quite young. I was around 11 and 12 when I was trying to check out Confucius's writings and things like that, which the librarian was suspicious of me and didn't really want to let me have them.
Wow, 11 or 12
but,
years old.
we worked it out. She saw that I wasn't really trying to look up bad words or something. I don't know why they do that. I'm not quite sure. Have to be a librarian to know. But, and then from there, when I became pregnant with my son in my early 20s, I started looking. I should say, actually, when I was 16, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was active in LA, and I grew up in LA.
Okay.
And so he started teaching some transcendental meditation techniques, and I got up the courage to go. He did it in a bank one time.
In the very early days.
And so then I would sit on my bed and I would try to recreate some of that stuff. I forgot about that. That just popped into my head.
What's interesting about that is not just so much that he was doing it in a bank, but who is the bank manager that said,
exactly.
Back in the 60s, I guess, this is a good idea. We should be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
what were they thinking?
Cool, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they had the teller part blocked off, but it was interesting to see that. So anyway, so that again kind of fueled this little bit of thinking about it in the back of my mind, that there was a different way of dealing with life. And then when I was pregnant with my son in my early 20s, I found a yoga book, like so many people in the library. Again, the library, it's like a theme of my life.
Yeah.
And started doing yoga on my own while I was pregnant. And then I was like, this is kind of cool, but I still didn't have a teacher. I was just doing this on my own. And then there was like a long hiatus of, various sports and activities and things where I really didn't do much of those practices until around 2006, 2004, somewhere in there. And I took a workshop with Carolyn Belko, a local Iyengar yoga instructor, and it really, lit this fire again in me.
Right. Well,
And
Carolyn Belko, you should say Carolyn Belko, local and world-renowned yoga instructor.
okay, thank you for correcting me.
Well, it's
And
true.
then
Yeah, go
then I
ahead.
was sort of off and running, and then started just seeking out other Iyengar yoga, and eventually found where Carolyn taught, but also where Gloria Goldberg taught, and they were both 25 miles from my house. My
How
pursuit of
lucky.
Iyengar yoga was always a drive.
Wow. Well, very, very lucky to have two phenomenal teachers that close. Some
Exactly,
people have to get on a plane or just never meet that kind of person. So,
exactly. Or they're
you
in
know,
an area where there just isn't anyone. We
yeah,
happen to be rich in Iyengar yoga in San Diego. Those aren't the only two really world-class
right. Of
instructors.
course, of course, of
But
course.
anyway, and then I was really into Iyengar yoga, and but I never thought I would teach. I wasn't interested in that. Wasn't interested in teaching. I didn't want to really go any further with it. And my son died. My son killed himself in 2014, and then I was down for the count for months. But then I was scheduled to go to this chanting workshop about 2 months after he died, maybe even a little less than that, I guess. He died in July, and I went in August. And Gloria, my teacher, had just said, I said, I'm not going, can't leave the
Of
house, blah,
course,
blah,
of
blah. And she's
course.
just like, just get in the car, just start driving
Take the
and see
first
what
step.
happens. And so I started driving, and I ended up went to this workshop, and it opened up this whole world of yoga philosophy, with a teacher that I finally felt connected to and really knew how to teach it. It wasn't just, here's a list of the yamas, here's a list of the
Right,
niyamas,
right.
but really, delving into like Patanjali studies and things like that, where I really understood what the purpose of those studies was. Where before I would just go, okay, another list we have to memorize.
Is intellectual philosophy before, and now it's coming home, not only because of the
Exactly.
position, not only because where you were coming from, but now you had a teacher that was connecting the
That's
dots
correct.
and gave it true meaning for
Both.
you.
Yes, correct. And that year, it was interesting. While I was in this workshop, Mr. Iyengar died. So it was all of a sudden, this whole group of people was grieving, not
Right.
just me. So it was on that level, it was a very interesting experience, the way it echoed with these other events that were happening. And and then at the same time, I had started helping in therapeutic yoga, both with Carolyn and Gloria, because, I figured I had to do something. I had to get out of this.
Right.
I had to start doing some seva to get out of my own mind.
Focus your
That,
mind a little bit, right? Instead of,
yeah, focus it. And also, helping somebody else, takes you out of your own suffering. And
for sure. Well, what's interesting is, when yoga started, whenever that was, thousands of years ago,
mhm,
hundreds of years ago, probably thousands, if not longer, the whole idea was there's a one-on-one between the yoga
yes,
teacher.
that's right.
They didn't have 50 people in the class with a megaphone. Okay, we're
Right,
gonna do, when the music bopping in the background. It was
exactly.
one-on-one, and it was for physical practice because, oh, I hurt myself here, this hurts there, and the yoga master would prescribe and practice with the student several poses that would help the physical and the mental heal.
Mhm.
So it's interesting that Iyengar has taken that very seriously because it's the only lineage that I know of that has this consistent methodology for people who are disabled or injured, plus a very strong interest in people that are less fortunate, like veterans programs. And this is not just in San Diego, but this is worldwide.
Right.
So it's interesting to see that he's taking that thread and from very beginning carrying it all the way through.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny in our culture right now, there's like a whole anti-guru movement, whatever you want to call
Hmm.
that. um, but I think that it's necessary. I'm not saying it's not necessary. I think there have been, I mean, you do a lot of yoga, you do a lot of this practice, you get energy, and sometimes that energy is used for things that you shouldn't be using it for. Okay,
Hmm.
that's just the way it is. But I really feel like Mr. Iyengar was really so multidimensional in the way he looked at yoga. And, he never said it was Iyengar yoga. He always said he taught Patanjali's yoga. He always
Right.
was very clear about that. Students call it Iyengar yoga, but he did not. And because he wanted to say it's grounded in something. It's not
Yeah.
grounded in me. It's grounded in a set of practices that go way
Hmm.
beyond me. So I feel like that, I really respect that. I really think that that's how you stay out of trouble, right? If you can control your own ego about what you're able to do in the world, and you can see that it's a parampara, it's a place, where this started, people carried it on. Some people used it for nefarious purposes or whatever, but other people kept to the idea that, okay, this is grounded in something.
Hmm.
This isn't coming from me. So
Right.
that you can, both while, no matter what you're teaching, and it really doesn't matter whether it's one-on-one therapy, whether or not it's a class, whether or not it's philosophy, that you keep this in mind, that this is part of that you're doing comes from these other people and what you've been given, that you've been given a lot and you have a duty to give a lot.
Right. It's an emphasis. It's not quite the right word. It is a highlighting of the lineage.
Right.
That this is not, and Mr. Iyengar in and of himself, of course, was a master, beautiful person, amazing yogi, et cetera, et cetera. But what he was basically saying is, look, I'm the channel.
Right.
I'm the vessel
That's right.
from Patanjali down through the ages. It's reminiscent to me of, I practiced Japanese karate for 40 years from a master. He's now in his 90s, Mr. Oshima, and his teacher was Master Funakoshi, who brought karate to the West and did a lot of amazing things. And there was a famous quote by Master Funakoshi that's in a lot of dojos, which goes, "The way, who will pass it on straight and well?"
Mm.
And the Iyengar lineage is the same thing. It's like, who's going to adhere to the authentic yoga practice? It's okay to have
Right.
your own style, your own way of teaching, and all that. But at the end of the day, there's the lineage and there's some authenticity to it. And that's the other thing that I liked about. I mean, there's all kinds of yoga out there that's phenomenal. I happen to
Sure.
love Iyengar. These last few
No, I would
years.
agree. I would
You know,
agree.
so it's not the only path, but it's certainly an authentic path. And I think you and your teacher, Carolyn Belko, are doing amazing job in being in lineage. So I love that. So when did you start teaching?
And did I start? Carolyn. Oh, I should say, okay, so, so I was helping in therapeutic yoga, and I wanted to take this 3-year therapeutic program. Um, and, uh,
Okay.
and I couldn't get in because I wasn't a teacher. So
Right.
my teacher, Gloria, said, okay, I got a deal for you. If you become a teacher, because the sticking point is if they're going to put that much time and effort into teaching you this, they want you to be able to pass it on. The only way you're going to be able to pass it on is if you're a teacher, if you're a certified teacher. So, and I had taken teacher training originally in way back in the first, maybe 2011 or something like that. I'd taken 1 year and I just was like, it's not for me. And I was like, okay, I'll do it, if you want me to, basically, I'll do it, but I don't know if I'll ever teach. She goes, that's
Right.
fine.
Right.
You just have to go through the program. So I went through the program. So then I became a certified teacher because, basically I wanted to get into this therapeutic wing, this therapeutic program. And then I became a certified teacher because of that. So it's always my teacher kind of prodding me forward. Rather
That's
than
what
me
teachers are
really
for.
wanting to do it.
Right. That's what teachers are for. So I don't know if I shared this with you, but my wife Lizzie, who of course you know,
Mhm.
we we've been doing Iyengar now 3 or 4 years, and before that I've done certified yoga, blah, 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 for another 20 years. But we tried Iyengar in San Francisco about 24, 25 years ago. Did we
Oh,
ever
yeah,
share
you
that
told me.
story?
Yeah, you told me
I
it was
told you this.
restorative class.
We didn't know it was First of all, we were in some other teacher training program that was very, not aggressive. That's the wrong word, or maybe that's the right word. That was very high energy.
You're in
And
Ashtanga, right?
it
Ashtanga?
was a type of
Yeah.
flow class. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Ashtanga, exactly. And we were in San Francisco, and we said, hey, let's go try this. We'd heard of Iyengar. We didn't know anything about it. And we go in there, and we're like 10 minutes into the class, and I'm lying down, and she's lying down. We got these blankets and these bricks, and our feet are on the wall, and we're like looking at each other because we came for a workout, you know? And we came out of there, and we like, it was just the wrong fit, wrong time. And it was
Yeah.
just funny and then for 20 years, we just assumed that's what Iyengar was.
Yeah.
And it clearly isn't.
Yeah.
But it was very funny at the time. And then, of course, my wife bumped into you a few years ago, thank God, and now drove us to your class and Carolyn Belko's class and Kathleen Quinn's class. So we're very, very lucky and very grateful for that.
Yeah.
So, what types of issues do you see? In most yoga classes, people come, they kind of know what yoga is now. This is not 30 years ago, and they're there for a workout of some type, physical mostly. Do you see that true in Iyengar as well, or is it a different type of student that's seeking whatever they're seeking when they come to Iyengar classes?
I think a different type of student sticks with it. I don't think a different kind of student starts. I think everybody starts, and who knows what, everyone is so different about why they start. Usually they do come for the physical exercise, which is an interesting thing, or their doctor. Now more and more we hear, or my doctor
Right.
told me to start yoga, which is cool, but
Right, that's crazy.
it's nice, it's so different from the way it used to be. But I also feel like it's different people stay for different yogas. Like, I think young people, they do want to move around. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's a whole branch of Iyengar yoga with young people. If you go to, sorry, there's sirens. If you go to India and you take Iyengar yoga at the institute, or you take yoga with some of these teachers that have been taught at the institute for years, you wouldn't even recognize there's a thread there, right? They're still using the same actions, but there's a lot more movement. So I just started a beginner course myself. I haven't done it since COVID because beginners usually need a lot of help, a lot of hands-on help. So over Zoom, I was just sort of like, is it ethical to start a beginner course over Zoom? I had like my doubts.
Yeah.
But then I realized, you know what? Just start it, just try it, see how it goes. And so I had my first one last night, and people did need a lot of help. But I quickly realized, okay, half these people want to go really slow, and half these people can go faster. So I just split it. I just split it up. It's like, okay, if you think you need this, do this. Otherwise, we're jumping. We're going to jump into it. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this. Yeah. So I feel like you have to just read your audience. Of course. Just like anything, right? You have to look around. You have to look and go, oh, this is, not happening for, 4 or 5 of these people. And I feel like it's very difficult in any teaching to not get lecturing. Like, you're doing this because it's good medicine for you. You should always lift your inner ankle. Lift your inner ankle, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And then you sound like this really bad school marm, but you're just doing it on lifting your inner ankle or some such thing. You know what I mean? And I feel like for most people, that's not that captivating when you first come out of the chute and you take your first yoga class. You don't care about it. You want to just get in there and do some things. You want to just see what yoga's about.
Let's do the poses.
Because you're in pain.
Yeah.
And then you want the other. Then you want somebody to carefully show you how to, do this or that. So there's always a complexity to that.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, and it's a difficult balance because you have so many different needs physically and emotionally. Right. Psychologically and spiritually and all that other stuff. And exactly. a good teacher, is going to see all that. And I've seen you do it. and I've seen Carolyn's outstanding doing
Yeah.
that. Carolyn can close her eyes and she knows, and she gives what that person needs. And that's a beautiful thing because then you know you're not going to get hurt. You know you're getting attention. That's a sign of a master teacher in my mind. So, what's the relationship for you between surfing and yoga? And I know there's one. Want to
Well,
hear?
I've always been a very active person. So I've been a mountain biker in the past, rock climber, hiker, I mean, all kinds of things. But I've always I wanted to learn to surf. And it's painfully and agonizingly slow for me. I started when I was 50. Um, but I've always loved the water. So I'm kind of into the whole ocean and just getting out in the water no matter what, and just trying no matter what. If you fall a lot, who cares? It's just the ocean. It's not going to hurt you. And when you do catch a wave, it's like this whole crazy, thrill, and you want to do it again. But when you're not catching a wave, you're just sitting out in the water. And for some reason that's also really nice. You're just sitting there, looking at what each wave, is that a wave, a surfable wave? Oh, is it not a surfable wave? Oh, look at that bird over there.
Well,
wow, there's a
when you're
seal
in
floating
that,
around.
I mean, when you're in that environment, I've done a little bit of surfing, not as much as you have, but when you're in that environment, you're not thinking about whatever problems or distractions you have.
Exactly.
You're not thinking about what am I going to do for lunch? Susie said this, I should have done that. You're just
Right.
not.
That's
You are
right.
totally immersed for a few reasons. One is, of course, you're in the ocean, so you're immersed in the ocean, but also because there's probably some safety issues as well. If the surf starts, you have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Is the surf the right surf? Are there other things like that? It's similar. You mentioned rock climbing. I've been a climber now for
Yes.
also a long time, since the 90s. And same thing, you can't be somewhere else in your mind. You're going to get hurt. And you don't want to be somewhere else. You want to be paying attention. So the ocean does that for you. And then, of course, you get the added benefit of if you catch a good wave, there's not only a high to it, but it's more than a high. You're really at one with your board, the ocean, you're in the zone, and that feels phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you just want more.
Yeah, exactly. You want more of that experience.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny, it's interesting how people who don't do your various things, including yoga, they have a whole mindset about what it is. And that's interesting to me too. Like one of my friends is just like, I would never go out in the water because there's sharks out there. And you're like, if a shark gets me, that occurrence is going to be so rare that was I was
Right.
supposed to be
Right.
taken out at that moment by a shark.
The shark would have got you
I
if the shark was going to get you and how to get you, the shark would get you in your car. That's how rare it
But
is.
that's a rare way to be taken out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
So I feel like I would never have that concern. That wouldn't be my concern. My concern is am I ever going to consistently do this sport right?
Because you always want to get better. There's your type A personality. I used to have.
There's so many factors.
Yeah,
and
there's
that's
so
what
many.
I find so interesting. They're just 1,000 every single day it's different. It's just like yoga. Every single day you get on that mat and something else is going on with you. And you just don't know what you have to figure out how you're going to fix it.
The potential is unlimited. And, my attitude about that when I was younger, when I first started karate was, I'm going to beat this thing. It was so hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to nail it. And he said 10, 20, 30 years later, and it's like he realized, no, it's never going to happen. It's just a moving target. It's just a moving target, which as well as it should be. In that sense, it's good.
Yeah.
So, because
For some
it's always,
people, that's why some people quit too.
interesting, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Because they just feel either that, like there are people that think, I'm never going to get this, ergo I'm going to quit. I'm too frustrated.
Yeah, if I can't do it perfectly, then then let me I'll go do something else.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to do it.
Yoga hurt my back. It's not, there's something about my back and me that I have to learn. And in the West, we also have all these wonderful drugs and surgeries, right? And people are tempted by those. You know, you tell somebody every single day of your life, you are going to have to do at least these 3 poses from now on. That's just a fact of life. Or their doctor says, well, we could just go in there and
Right.
you know, put a couple of rods in there, whatever, and you'll be okay. And, you know, we're used to in the West really relying on those quick solutions. And it's hard to convince somebody the other path is probably in the long run going to be better. I mean, we don't know that for sure, but probably just because there are problematic issues with surgery and you're still also in the same body. So you still also have to help yourself for other reasons. So, but it's a hard sell.
Well, I think what's interesting is, no, I agree. I see it all the time. You know, Western science, quick, fix it now. Give me that shot. Give me that vaccine. Done.
Right.
I mean, look how lucky we are. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. In case someone's watching this years from now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and miraculously, these companies came up with this vaccine that can really, you know, effectively wipe it out. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But what's I find interesting is we're talking about, you know, Western science is relatively new. We're talking, you know, whatever, 100 years, 150 years, Western science. And we got thousands and thousands, if not millions of years of, we'll call it a more organic way to heal. And and now we're starting to see that big wave, to use that analogy, of the Eastern philosophy, healing, mentality, and approach start coming west. You know, like you said, 10 years ago, who would have said, oh, my doctor said I should do yoga? Even 10 years ago, that would have been wacky. Now we talk about it as if it's common. So I have no doubt that the power of we'll call it the lineage, or the power of the organic teachings, whatever the teachings are, whether it's karate or yoga, you know, are going to imbue the West as it is now, you know, all for the good, and then until finally you have a good mix, which is, I got into a car accident, take me to the hospital, my leg's broken.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got this other thing, well, maybe you should be meditating or doing yoga.
Yeah.
And a healthy mix is good. So, you know, in addition to yoga, I understand that you chant. So can you talk a little bit about chanting and how that's different or the same than, you know, yoga or meditation?
Well, I think I wanted to go back to that last thing that you said.
Yeah, please.
You know,
Absolutely.
this whole East-West thing.
Yeah.
Which I do think that barrier is becoming less and less. I do think that more people know about. I mean, you go into the Home Goods and you can pick up a Buddha statue now. You know what I'm saying? Okay.
Staples. Go to Staples.
Yeah, you know, it's not, you might say, okay, that's so wrong-headed, right? But at the same time, somebody goes into Home Goods, they think that Buddha statue means something to them. May not be the right thing, you know, who am I to say? It might be the same color as their drapes. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm just saying that to me, there's a blurring there. And why? And I feel like, and the reason that I went into chanting, and so this is all going to come around, is that when you're faced with something that is beyond your ability to cope with it, whether it be pain, right? Can be physical pain, can be emotional pain. It can be any of these planes of consciousness. When you're faced with something that you really cannot cope with, and it's on the level of a spiritual crisis, which, let's face it, you know, the West has moved away from spiritual practices. And I'm not criticizing that. There are good reasons for that, okay? But what I'm saying is that there is still something that calls to us about it, many of us about it. And and in the West, we just don't regularly practice it anymore. Many people, some people do, but many people don't. And I feel like there's always, once you get into any of these other things, whether it be meditation, yoga, I mean, meditation goes almost the other way, you know, I'm going to work on my mind before I work on my body. And that, you know, that that hasn't been my access point. You know what I mean? But I feel like you need to have something that calms your mind. You need to have something that allows you to go forward whether it be, helping yourself with dealing with your pain, your level of pain, or help emotional or physical or whatever, and learning how to deal on that plane with that new reality, that new physical or emotional pain. How do I deal with it? How do I move forward with it? And I think a lot of people have found that traditional talk therapy or whatever, there's something that it doesn't take you far enough. You can, okay, yes, I know I'm supposed to use I statements or whatever. I'm not mocking it. Please
Right.
don't get me wrong. But you know what I'm saying? But then there's yet another component, like, why am I supposed to be here? What am I supposed to do? Where's my life supposed to be going? How am I supposed to be of use? And I feel like those are the answers that come from these more, for lack of a better word, spiritual practices. You know what I'm saying? That we all need them, and we are left unsatisfied, no matter how many things we get, and we wonder why. So I even think it's simpler than that. And for me, that entry into chanting and philosophy, in yoga, in our Iyengar yoga, the practice of meditation is called pranayama. We work with the breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that never really, I could do it and I would do it, but it didn't call to me. Whereas the chant, once I started chanting, which is another practice, just like pranayama, it requires the breath, requires focus, it requires, learning all these chants in a different language that you don't know. That for me became my meditative practice. That spoke to me more than the pranayama practice. And not that I don't do pranayama, it's just that for me, this was a way into those same avenues, if you will, without, and something I wanted to stick with. Something that brought me closer to understanding why I'm supposed to be here.
Well, you're very lucky in that regard that you found that, because certainly most people, whether they're seeking or not, don't find something that resonates with them. But
Right.
more than resonates, that's not even the right word. It's like you're able to. It takes you. It's like your surfboard. It allows you to surf. And be in the zone, or be at one, or whatever those words are. So we're both very lucky in that we found that through wonderful teachers. What's also interesting is that there's different levels. Some people are not out there looking because
Right. True.
they're just not.
That's true.
They're not in pain, emotional or otherwise.
Right.
And if they are, they don't even realize it. They think that's normal.
Yes.
Or they live in a box and don't understand that, and they think that's just how it is. Or they see no way out. Sure, they watch TV, but they see, they may see something on TV, but they don't think they can do it. So I think in that regard, and then there's others that do come to class. They do come to yoga class, and like you said, some stick, some don't. They find something else. So for us, this works. What I've also noticed, this podcast, I'm talking to a lot of different spiritual teachers, not just Eastern, Judaic, Islam, things like that. And what's very interesting is everything we just talked about, that's in these other paths as well. Mm-hmm. They're not really in the traditional version, from what I can see, of Judaism and Christianity, but in a more spiritual version, like we meet teachers that meditate or that practicing Christians or Jews, but they meditate, or they're spiritual, or they see something else in the world right here, and they're able to surrender to it in some way. That's so in that regard, we're really all the same. I kind of am biased towards the Eastern approach because that's what worked for me. The Western approach, the Judeo-Christian approach, did not work for me. But now that I'm kind of older, I understand that, had I had a different teacher growing up,
Yes,
I'd probably be, a modern practicing Jew. But I had the wrong teacher. I didn't have teachers that worked for me in that regard.
Right.
That's my and now that kind of clues me into the whole education system and what works and what doesn't work. But that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I look at it more as I'm very focused, of course, as we both are, on the Eastern way, and I'm thrilled that I'm here, and you're thrilled that you found that path. But I've noticed that it's more of a spiritual thing that transcends religion in that regard.
Right. And I think that's what is, that was what was appealing to me about yoga. And, I had a discussion with actually a Christian lady who came to the door, Jehovah's Witness that came to the door. And it was actually a really good conversation. And I like having conversations with proselytizing people that come to the door, because I always find that it's very interesting for me to talk to them, why they're going. I think of that sacrifice. Are you and I going out, walking around and knocking on a door, every
Sure.
door, and facing people that are just like mostly mean?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, to me, that's really putting their shoe leather in their spiritual practice, right? That they feel
Commitment.
so strongly that if they don't reach out to others, those people are going to face, hellfire, whatever it is. So they're really trying. They're really trying hard. And I always like to have those kinds of conversations. And she went after me. She said, I don't really think you're not Indian. You're not, why do you think you can do these things and really think you're doing them authentically? And, and as far as I can see, you're kind of doing them kind of half-assed. She didn't use that
Really?
word, but she kind of said that. And I was sort of like, wow, that's really interesting that you say that, because of course I feel sometimes like I'm not, really adhering to these things. This is tall order to adhere to all the things that are, yoga philosophy demands of us. And, and I said, and I'm certainly not doing what you're doing. I said, I'm not walking door to door and telling people they should take up downward dog or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm not. And I just think it's really interesting. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous was started by a guy who pulled drunks off the street and then said, if you fed them, gave them a bed, and showed them someone cared, they would stop being alcoholics. That was the original founder. And then the other branch was like, no, you have to, then they split off. Then the other branch was like, no, they have to come to you. And that's the only way they can get help. They have to admit that they need help.
Mm-hmm.
And those two splits I see are like the split of so many spiritual and religious practices, including my own, and my brother, who was an alcoholic, reformed alcoholic, and he was of the former. He went out and he dragged people off the street. And that's how he was part of that thing. And he said, many people in this world, they never experienced somebody caring enough to offer them some basic things that they need.
Well, that's a phenomenal point, because some people are so low that, yes, I have to go seek help. I get it. Great.
Right.
Welcome. Please. I did a little bit of work with the homeless, so I have a little bit of an understanding of it. Other people, guess what? They're so low, there is no way they're going to ever be able to, ask for help.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
almost an impossibility. So what do we do about them? Do we just, okay, we're not going to take care of them? But I like the conversation you had with the person that came to your door, because it sounds like she was at least willing to listen. Well, look, we're not
But
going
she
to
wasn't going to change her mind, and I was.
That's okay. That's okay.
And we
But
both knew that,
that's all right. Look, we can disagree.
Exactly.
I'm married. I know what that's about. Okay. but let's at least be able to listen to each other's views and say, hey, and say, thank you so much. I disagree,
Exactly.
but I wish you well, and I hope you have a great day.
Exactly.
But what I would have said, of course, because I have all the answers because I wasn't there, was, look,
I'll
and I
send her
like
to your house, but you can't be mean to her.
I'll give her my neighbor's address. Just off by one digit. So no, what I would have done is I like to quote the Dalai Lama, and I'm a big fan of his. Who says, my religion is kindness.
Right.
I could sum up my religion and be kind.
That's right.
And that to me is what it's about. So if you are, as a I forget what kind of Christian she was. You're practicing that. I salute you and I applaud you, and you're committed. You're doing it. You're
Right.
putting your shoe leather where you're, love. And I'm doing it too in the way, not only do I practice yoga, but I teach it to other people,
Hmm.
not because I want them to chant or pray to Buddha or pray to
Right.
this Hindu god or whatever. If
That's
they want to do that, that's great. But at the
that's great.
essence of it is kindness.
Right.
And on that, I think we can both, I would say, maybe we agree on that.
Yeah. And
And
I
she,
really feel also, yeah, that it provides us for whatever amount of time, an hour and a half, a spot, a place where you're safe. You don't, it's apolitical. We're not going to like, take your greatest held beliefs and challenge them here. You're just going to try to do this one thing, and you're going to see where it goes, where it leads you. And I think that is also calls to people, you know, here I am, for this hour and a half, I'm just doing this thing, you know, and whether or not, like you, I don't think that somebody should do it a particular way. Even like I'm a little bit of, I'm going more and more rogue in my own yoga teaching, still with,
should we be editing this part of the podcast out, Bonnie? I
no,
just want to
still
make sure.
following Mr. Iyengar's teachings.
Okay,
Nothing I'm doing is
I'm
not
joking.
rooted in what he's said
Of
and
course.
what he's done. And you basically, although within the structure of what you're doing, like you're not going to have somebody, doing whatever flip-flops or whatever while you're teaching a pose. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is that there are people that are never going to be able to do certain poses. They're never going to be able to do them, but they should know enough about them that they should be able to approach them in their own way. And hopefully then when they leave there, they've gotten a spark of how they should take it into their own life, instead of this is what my teacher said and I just feel like I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's hope. It's not, in compassion, there's hope, right? That you're giving someone a little bit of hope, you're showing them compassion, but you're also pushing a little bit too. It's all of those things. I think you would know this better than me, but I don't know exactly where it comes from. But the three types of mothers.
No, I don't know this one. Yeah.
Oh,
Go
okay. So
ahead.
there's like the fish mother. The fish mother really can't do anything except for put herself in the way of a bigger fish and her young, right? They can't, that's it. That's all she can do.
Right.
And then you like have the dog mother, and the dog mother can pick their progeny up and sometimes help them, just literally pick them up and move them out
Right.
of danger. And then there's the monkey mother that can completely embrace their offspring. And as a teacher, you're a little bit of all three mothers. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, they need to find a little bit more their own way. I just have to make sure they don't get hurt. And then there's, hey, wait, don't do it that way. You literally like pick them up, and go, you gotta do it this
Right.
way,
Right.
And then there's the people that come and they're just broken. They're coming because maybe they don't even know why they're coming, except for they're in pain. And then you have to also show this deeper compassion to show them, I'll help you. I'm going to try to help you. And, that's more of the therapeutic yoga. I know you're in pain. I'm just going to try to see if I can help you.
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately at the end of the day, when someone leaves class, when I used to teach, I haven't taught yoga in quite a while, teach other things, but someone leaves class, sure, if they can do a better tree, the pose or trikonasana or whatever, wonderful. But ultimately, I like that people can leave clear and uplifted. One of the problems I had with some of the hot yogas, not all of them, was I'd be spaced out. And at the time, because you're exhausted, you're wiped out. And at the time I thought, oh, this is spirituality. I'm spaced. I didn't know I was spaced out. I thought I was high. I wasn't high. I was spaced out, exhausted. But maybe I was in so much pain beforehand that was actually an uptick.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's about. What it's about is clarity. and transcendence, and maybe a little bit of surrender that the teacher's going to show me the right path. And all this is not necessarily said and spoken in yoga class. Of course, we know that. But just by doing the poses, observing your breath, having a teacher who is positive, compassionate, encouraging, and of course, preventing people from getting hurt, and you're going to walk out of that class feeling that way. That's the beauty of a lot of activities, frankly. If you're just focused, observant, connecting your breath to your body, not getting hurt, not being distracted, and you have someone, a guide, a teacher who's there out of compassion, out of love, who really wants you to benefit, then you're going to walk out of that situation, feeling better.
Yeah, or not. And then you have to decide what happened in there. I had a friend who was going through radiation therapy.
Okay.
And she wanted to go to class with me on Saturday. And I was like, okay, you can, but my teacher is very strict. And when she knows that you're going through radiation therapy, she's going to make some recommendations about what you're going to do. And so because you're my friend and I'm going to take you in there, you have to do exactly what she says. Okay, so whatever she says, you're going to have to do it. Otherwise, it's going to come back at me.
Right.
And we were doing that day, we were doing Surya Namaskarasanas, those jumping poses.
Yep.
And my teacher said, doing radiation therapy, your body is taking a hit. You're going to do these things. And my friend wouldn't do it. She got kicked out of class. So that's that's strong. And my friend was mad. She was really mad. She was so mad.
There is a very important teaching there.
Yes, if you're
Very
willing to hear
important
it.
And sometimes it takes time.
Exactly.
We've got a strong ego, strong sense of resistance, strong sense of I know what's best for me. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. But once you cross over, especially we're getting back to East versus West, you cross into the Eastern world and you're coming to a teacher. In this case, I think I know who is teaching, who is a master, and you're saying, please teach me. Then you got to have your hand open and be ready to accept the teachings. And if not, then you really shouldn't be there.
Well, that's the thing, is that people come for different reasons. Like she wanted to come because, I was going. I want to go with you. And I was trying to explain to her, it's not going to be like that. You're not going to be an anonymous person in a class.
Right.
Just doing what you want.
Right. That's not how the show
right.
goes here. Yeah.
But she wasn't listening. She didn't hear that level. She didn't hear what I was trying to convey to her, which is fine. A lot of us don't hear. Then
she heard it now.
Then she heard it because my teacher is so strong, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about when you go out of there, whatever your state of mind is, you should examine it. Why am I so angry? And that's everything from you didn't like it when your mother told you what to do or whatever, some simple things like that, to, I don't want to give in to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I need to help my body be a little kinder to myself today, or when I'm going through something like this. That is that for her meant weakness. And weakness wasn't something she was going to allow herself to feel. So there's so many things that come out of when you come out of any class and you realize you have these other emotions, maybe not clarity, maybe not even feeling better, or maybe even feeling a little bit worse, and whether or not you're willing to go examine those. And I'm not saying, she should go back to this teacher. I'm just saying, look at that. Look at why these things make you so angry, or look at why, you're upset, instead of just going, I'm upset because that teacher, say, why did that trigger me so bad?
I'm glad we're talking about this, because I do remember back in the day when I first started, karate class, 40 plus years ago, I was always like this in my mind. I was totally judgmental and resistant to what my teacher had to say. Now, I didn't really fight him, and I didn't really resist him explicitly, but in my
Right.
mind I did. The
Yeah.
reason I didn't resist him explicitly is he would beat me up. But but that kind of over the many, many years, now when I come into a classroom situation, I empty my mind. Of course, I still have some stuff going on,
Right.
if I observe it and I notice it, I shut it down because I'm there to learn.
Right.
And I know that the teacher knows more than I do.
Right.
And if I don't like it when I'm done, I'll say thank you very much and I don't have to come back. But while I'm
Right.
there, I am going to empty my mind and take what I can get
Right.
and just be an open vessel as best as I can. But that came from a very strong, in my case and in your friend's case, very strong ego and sense of what my requirements are, or who I think I am, and this is
Hmm.
who I think I should be, and what I should be doing. I, me.
Right.
And we're holding on tight to that. And when someone comes along and says, "No, I don't want you to do it this way. You should be doing it this way," that resistance comes. And the greater the resistance is a sign of a larger ego, a
Yeah. Or
larger
just,
sense of holding on or
yeah.
grasping.
Yeah. You have this image, I forget what Ram Dass calls that, but you have this, what did he used to call that? I can't remember it's like what you're saying, the self-identity that's so strong that you just feel like, this is me, I'm this name, I'm this career, I'm this, I'm this thing. And what's interesting about that is you can build up all of those things. And as long as they remain unchallenged by events, you're cool, right?
Right. Good luck with that.
As long as you're rock climbing and you don't come off the face of that thing and turn upside down, fall out of your harness and break your back.
Right.
As long as, your dearly loved one doesn't decide to take their life. As long as all of these things don't occur, you're able to keep all of that intact. She walked out of that class, my friend, saying, I'm, this person, and I'm an athlete, and I don't need to do these laying down like you and your wife. I don't need to do these laying down poses. I'm healthy. They
I'm
don't know
right.
me.
And I'm
He doesn't
right.
know me. I'm like a star athlete.
Right. I'm right. I'm right. And I know what's best for me. And me,
But when
I.
all of that is taken away and you're really left, with just your own mind to cope with, that's when you realize those identities, they're not your identity.
It's just an illusion.
Yeah, it's still temporary that you built up.
That we buy into. And it's a habit that we've created and developed, maybe starting as a child, and we're taught certain things about ourselves, and we absorb certain things about who we think we are, and we repeat them over and over and over again for 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, 70 years until they're ensconced. Or you can do, and the East is outstanding at this, or you can do all these practices which gently, slows this type of story down, and maybe the story even fades about who we think we are.
Right.
And then we're open to any and all possibilities. But when
Right.
you're holding on really tight, it's going to be very painful when something comes along that doesn't agree with your understanding or your thought or who you think you are.
Right. Right.
So she had a wake-up call. Well, I hope she.
Well, she didn't, because.
She didn't pick up the phone.
Still tells me about how mean my teacher was. But that's okay. That's the thing also, that's part of the observing, right? Is when you have people in your life, or even when they just come to your door to try to make you become a Jehovah's Witness, whatever it is, you have to watch your own mind with that. Because she's not going to be the only person that ever comes into my yoga class and decides, no, I'm not doing what she's saying. That's not right for me. I can go into the full pose. Why is she making me use a chair? Why is she, that there's a lot of resistance to that. And so what level of resistance, and I've seen both ends of the spectrum. I've seen teachers just say, fine, and just ignore that person, let them do whatever they want.
Right.
Just ignore them.
Right.
And then I've seen other teachers stubbornly get after that person through the whole class. And do I think either one is better? I don't know. I know that for some people, the getting after you will make some people want to come back.
Right.
Because they think that's strong. At some level that got through their head, right?
They need that.
Yeah. And then I also know that the ignoring will make some people leave, but it'll also make some people come back.
Tough call. Yeah, no,
So
I remember.
You just don't know.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, once again, when I was teaching, people would come into class and they'd do some pose, however they'd done it with some other teacher, and I would make, a comment or correction, and then most people, 9 out of 10, would say, okay, and they would try to do it, whatever I was teaching, but there would always be one or two that would insist with their body and their mind that they were going to do it a different way. And I might say one or two more comments, then after that, I got to move on because I got other students that want to hear what I have to say. So, very interesting. There's no one answer. I wish there were, but there's no. It's a balance. It's a balance.
Yeah, but that's also kind of fun. I mean, that's also kind of
keeps it interesting
to look at all the different things.
Yeah.
And how we all come in and how we all go out and why we do what we do.
Human beings, we're so funny characters, us human beings. So.
But it's especially interesting to watch your own mind. Like. The teacher just says, okay, screw it. And the teacher says, I'm going to battle with your ego. I'm putting my ego against your ego. Let's see who wins. And I've seen Mr. Iyengar do both too.
Mm-hmm.
Just ignore someone completely and then go after somebody else. I've seen him do that also. And whether or not he's using that person as an example or whether or not he thinks he's getting in there somehow, we'll never know. He would know. I wouldn't know.
Interesting. I guess, also I've seen similar examples, and I would think Mr. Iyengar's case and the other masters very few that I've studied with, it's not their ego that's at battle with the student. They're just trying to help the student.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're not,
no, they don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not angry.
Right. It appears that way, but I know when I've seen a few of the masters that I work with that they're not, deep down, they're not angry. They don't, they just want to help.
And they'll use whatever tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't, what I meant about we don't know what's going on there is I feel like I don't know why they're using the strength, their strength with one person or another and their lightness with one person or another, like that's on a level that I'll never, probably achieve in this lifetime. Because I know it's working on some other level.
Right. It's a deeper level. It's not the surface.
Yeah, it's not, and somebody witnessing it doesn't know. And that's why this anti-guru movement, like, well, they yell or they do this and they do that. And that's not yoga. That's not compassion. That's not these things, and I just feel like unless you were in the room, and that was going on. And being immersed in what was happening, it's hard to tell what was happening because those beings aren't you.
Right.
And they really aren't.
Yeah, it's very easy to judge, unfortunately, and that's how we've trained our minds, and that's the culture we live in. And it's very unfortunate because even if you are there in some of these examples, and we don't have to get that specific, I also try not to judge because, like you said, we don't know what's in people's minds. I barely know what's in my mind sometimes, let alone I'm going to think that so-and-so is doing or saying it because of this reason. It could be 1,000 reasons. Know. We just don't know, so that's why we don't judge.
Yeah.
We try to do our best and have the right, compassion and kindness and all that wonderful stuff. But at the end of the day, no judgment, and we just move on.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about some very unfortunate difficulties that you had to deal with when your son Ezekiel passed away. Can you share with us how either yoga or chanting or what did you use to kind of help you get through it, and how did you take care of yourself?
Well, I want to say that at that point in my life, I'd been practicing yoga for more than a decade. And I practiced yoga basically for physical health, I want to say, mental health, too, but physical health. But it's like all of these practices that we do that have these mind component, the mind factor always going in the body. We don't really understand on the subtle channels how it works, because it is subtle. That's why we call them subtle channels.
Right. Right.
They're not easy to access. And when my son died, I had, like I said, I had these series of things that happened. I went to this workshop. Mr. Iyengar died. I was with all these other people that I loved dearly. We were all in the same state of mind. That was mystical to me. Like, why did that happen? But after he died, I want to say immediately after he died, he started talking to me in my head,
Right.
And the first thing he said to me was, Mom, please forgive me. I couldn't take it anymore. Because I had terrible guilt. And I just was like, forgive you. I'm the one that should be forgiven. I'm the one that, didn't stop you, didn't help you so that you could have lived in the world longer or whatever, been here longer, and he was just like, no, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't do it. And from then on, he just, we had this running dialogue about all of the things that happen after you die. And it helped me. It helped me a lot because at first I just wanted to die also, because all of half of my identity had been stripped away. Now I was no longer a mother of 2 children. I had to wrap my head about being a mother of 1. I just had a child, that you raised from a baby, decide it wasn't worth living. Decide that it wasn't worth living. And those were all heavy things. Changed whatever, this identity I had built up was gone now. And I had to rebuild this identity from or not. I had to understand, how am I going to keep going? How am I going to keep living?
What is my identity now? Who am I now?
What am I supposed to be here for?
Right.
If this can happen, if God can do this, what are we supposed to do? All the classic questions that all the great thinkers, have wrestled with much more elegantly than I. But I feel like his talking to me about, even simple things, like his father was always kind of egotistical, and he had a lot of pain about his father at the end. And, and I was just like, and your dad, he's making me so angry, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Mom, if you think of my dad like a toddler who hasn't even learned to walk yet, then why would you be angry at a toddler that hasn't learned to walk yet? Would that be what you, and even things like that, where I was just like, wow, he's seeing this thing from such a different perspective.
The wisdom that is being uncovered now and communicated to you is just amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing he said that I'll never forget, and is with me every day, is I said, if, I just don't understand how God can strike somebody with like what happened to you. He was experiencing mental illness at the end. And, that then you kill yourself. And I don't understand any of this. And he was like, Mom, it's all about love, Mom. All of it. Everything you are doing on this earth is about love. And I said, how the heck is this about love? You killing yourself. How is that about love? It's the opposite of love. And he said, Mom, that's for you to figure out.
Wow.
Your life, that's for you to figure out. And that was hard to swallow then. And I work on it every day, understanding how that was about love. But then I see my own transformation. And believe me, I don't care about my transformation in the sense that I'd rather have my son back any day.
Of course.
Anytime anyone came up and said,
Yeah.
you can have your son back, I would say, I'll take that.
Right.
I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah.
Because
Of course.
people will say to me, and this really is the thing that I hate most in the world, this phrase, things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that because I don't think that you can say to somebody whose child killed themselves, things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say, you could say, is something like, this happened. Now, how are you going to transform your life so that you can be able to deal with this with compassion, love, and find a way that you can become a vehicle for love? That's what I would say. I wouldn't, because I think that how we deal with these things is the measure of who we are. But
yeah, the things happen for a reason.
Know why these things happen. They're mysterious. Yeah. They're mysterious why they happen.
Yeah,
and and maybe we'll know. I hope at the end, we have like a conference call, and they say, "Okay, everybody, come in here. Okay, we're going to explain everything that happened to you and why it happened." That's what I'm hoping. And then that takes a week or two.
Is that going to be a conference call? Is that going to be on Zoom, that conference call, or is that going to be just on the phone? Well, the people that say things happen for a reason, that's very, I don't want to say easy, but it's comfortable for me to say that, for someone to say that. It gives them comfort. It's logical. There's logic to it. But there's also a certain predeterministic thinking about that, which, frankly, I don't believe in. I think we have free will. I think there's a cause and effect in the world, and then we can decide what to do. Things happen, and now we can decide, how do I want to deal with this up here? And hopefully we deal with it better each time, and if not, then we'll have another cause and effect going on. So, but what an amazing wisdom that came to you from his, whatever we want to call it, his being, his consciousness, his spirit, things like that, that, I don't know, I don't want to say there's a sense of closure, because I don't think there's ever going to be a sense of closure. No. I just think that it just helps you, frankly, get through the world a little bit better.
For sure.
Feel a little bit more comfortable, so to speak, in your body. Not that you'll ever be comfortable. There's a story about the Dalai Lama who, one of the older monks came to him. This story is probably about 20, 30 years old. It came to him and said, I want to practice a specific type of yoga. I think it's called Anu yoga, or Tibetan type of yoga. Mm-hmm. And the Dalai Lama says, you're quite old for that. I don't recommend that for you. Because there's a lot of jumping. You may have seen some of this. A lot of jumping out of seating positions and very intense breathing. And the Dalai Lama said, I don't think that's for you. Why don't you try something else? And it's very unfortunate, but sometime later, the monk committed suicide. And the Dalai Lama felt horrible about that.
Of course.
And years later, they would, the interviewer would ask him, says, well, how do you, are you, I forget how they phrased it, this is paraphrasing, are you over that? Do you not think about it? And he goes, no, I think about it all the time. It's still there. It's still there. So, and it's a terrible thing that happened. He doesn't feel guilty about it, but he feels the pain. It's still there. So, and I think that's normal. Take a hammer and keep hitting your head with the hammer, you're going to still feel the pain. But then what do you do about it? How do we live to go on day by day? And in your case, you got this incredible wisdom from your son about, love and compassion, and that's what it's about. And that's the direction you chose as you now continue to teach, with a very different motivation than you had, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, which is, you want to help people. You want to give back.
Yes. Well, I also feel too, why is it still there? These things are deep samskaras, right? They're deep. And sometimes they may even be the same samskara for other lifetimes. Okay. Samskara meaning impression.
Yes, of course.
So to me, the things that are still there, they're things that you may confront, they may come up again. Dalai Lama may have another person. He may not ask about this yoga, but he may ask about something else. The Dalai Lama is like, I don't know. It's not the greatest thing. And I'll bet you the next time he goes, let me think on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That it's, I hope I never have to be in a situation where, I'm confronted on the level of life and death that I had with my son, but there are probably going to be elements of it that come again. And so I feel like then the mind, if you deal with it in a way that you can keep the mind open, that there's a lesson of love and compassion there that you need to find, then the next time it comes around, your mind will be open to it. In other words, it's not going to be afraid anymore, because you've already worked through the fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be reactionary anymore because you've already had that reaction, and then you found something that truly terrible came out of it. So you're conditioning the mind. I feel like the mind gets conditioned by these things. If you're lucky, I'm not saying you have to, because for crying out loud, if you want to just crawl up in a ball after your kid kills themselves, I don't blame you. Okay. I want to make sure that's clear.
Right.
But if you can, then you're available for the next person that may come to you with some of these same things, so that you can respond in a more complete way. You have your booty available to you. You're not just going to react, or you're not just going to be scared,
Right. And you're going to pay attention.
Yeah, to your
Not going to be flippant.
response.
You're not going to ignore it. You're going to pay attention because.
And that might not mean that the result might not be the same. I'm not saying you could maybe change the result, but you can change your way of dealing with it.
Right.
So that the next time around, something comes up that has echoes of this situation, you'll feel better about the way you were able to bring yourself to it. That's all, and especially the fear. So much of what happens when we can counter something, like somebody who's kind of going off the deep end, is we're afraid, right? We're afraid to get involved in that. Well, I don't want to get involved in that. This homeless person's coming up to me and wants to tell me about whatever. I don't want to deal with that. And it doesn't even have to be a homeless person. It can be anything, any person that comes to you with something that you don't want to deal with.
Right.
It happens all the time.
Makes you feel uncomfortable on some level, so it's easier to shut it down and move away.
Can you practice? Can you use that as an opportunity to practice something different? Even if it's just for your own curiosity, can you be different in that situation?
Yeah.
I used to train dogs also. That was something I loved, to train dogs. And every dog would be a different lesson, a different, because they were never the same. I fostered them. They would come from I had no idea where they came from, but I know that dogs like to move on really quickly. So I'd always be like, okay, this dog wants to move on. It doesn't want to be, do these weird behaviors or whatever. And I would just start from that assumption, rather than be afraid or get mad. I would start from the assumption that basically this dog doesn't want to be doing these things, but it needs help to understand how to be different, So I feel like I've tried to train my own mind like those dogs. I try to be like that dog. Like I try to be open, that I can do something different. They don't have to be the same, and especially when fear comes up, I try to do that.
Yeah, fear is a very interesting, super interesting topic, because I think that's the driver behind a lot of certainly our thoughts, our actions, our resistance, things like that. Yeah, for sure. What I like about the Eastern way in dealing with a lot of pain, call it emotional pain, is we don't run away from it. We'd like to. We don't ignore it. We don't suppress it. We do our best, if we can. Sometimes it's very severe, but if we can, to kind of lean into it a little bit and just feel it and feel what it's like to understand it and feel it and let it kind of change a little bit as we start to observe it as a witness. Maybe it'll get less, maybe it'll get better, maybe it'll get worse, but at least we're being there in the moment. And when you're there in the moment, it's actually a liberating feeling, even if it feels bad.
Yeah. My chanting teacher's teacher told her once, when you're going through something really that you wish you could not go through, which all of us do all the time, he said, in a moment where you're just like either at your altar or you're meditating or whatever practice you have, that's to try to get in touch with your mind or your soul. He said, if you can, think about it as think, what about this is teaching me this thing that I couldn't have learned in any other way? And I feel that is a really deep thing in
Right.
one sentence. I think it's a super, super deep idea. That if we look at the things that cause us fear or pain that come into our lives as that we couldn't have learned the lessons that we might learn from it, we might gain from it. I'm not saying we always do. Any other way.
Yeah.
It can take us into a really profound conversation with ourselves.
Well, on some level, and, I didn't say this, my teacher said this, everything is a teaching. Mm-hmm. If we want to look at it that way. Or you could just look at it as, she's a pain in the ass, or I don't want to do that, and move on. Okay, you could do that, and time will go on, and the next day will be here, but it's going to come back at some point, exactly. because life is that way. We can't, or as Pema Chodron says, I could lock myself up in my room, and put a triple lock on the door because I want to make sure no one breaks in. Oh, but wait, someone can come in through the window, so maybe I should board up the window. Oh, but someone can, and it's like all of a sudden you got all this protection around you, but it does that. Then A, what kind of life do you have? And B, there's always going to be, I'm not going to go out to restaurants anymore because this is before the pandemic, because people there could be nasty. So I'm going to have them deliver the food into that. We got all these ways to protect ourselves, but at the end of the day, you certainly don't learn anything, and you have to leave the room, and better to try to deal with these situations and understand them, lean into them, and feel them and observe them. And in most cases, the fear fades a little bit over time. Doesn't happen right away, but because in most cases it is just fear and not, we don't live in a war zone, thank God, where guess what? When those bombs go off, it's good to feel fearful because now I'm going to go downstairs into the bomb shelter. So fear is a good thing there.
Right.
But in most cases in our world, it's not the case. It's just something going on in our habituated reactive mind.
But even fear in the bomb shelter case, you could be frozen with fear.
Right.
Or you can
Absolutely.
go, I got to gather up my shit and get downstairs.
Right. Absolutely. No, good, very good point.
And the only reason I'm saying that is because it's an acculturation. It's a training of the mind to do something else. Okay. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, I hope I don't come off as self-righteous or anything like that.
No.
In other words, that it's just, you have to teach yourself how to be a different way, just like I had to, maybe take one of these dogs and I had to show it a different way, like maybe 1,000 times before I got it, right? Before it understood, oh, this was the action she wants me to do instead. And that's how I'm saying I'm like that dog. Like I'm amazed at when you're working on something, you get so many opportunities to work on it. You just get over and over and over and over and over again. It presents itself to you. And if you just could cultivate your mind, like, oh, there's this thing again. I get to do it again.
Right.
Here's this annoying checker. I get to deal with her again. I get to
Right.
try something else now and see if that
Absolutely.
works.
We're retraining the reactive mind in a
Yes,
healthier manner, certainly healthier for the person I'm annoyed about, but healthier for me.
for you.
And that's that's all we can do. So like everything's a teaching if we want to
Yeah,
take it
and
that
that's
way.
all you're trying to do.
Right.
It's not like you're trying to change somebody else. And
Yeah.
it's really clear that you can't do
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah.
can't, they're in their own head. And really, you don't know why they're that way. It's not your business, you know?
Right.
But
Like I said earlier, I barely know what's in my mind half the time. I'm going to try to guess someone's motivation. It's like, it's great. An expression that we use sometimes is, you can try to teach a pig to sing, but pigs can't sing. And at some point the pig just gets really annoyed. So
yeah,
it's like, sure, you can help people and do the best you can. But at the end of the day, you just got to take care of, it's about what's in your state of mind. That's the
right.
only thing we can really control. I can't control your state of mind. I can only control my state of mind, and that's the only thing that I can control.
And that's hard enough,
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah, it's
Hard enough for
lifetimes.
any lifetime to just try to make sure that you respond evenly with an even temper so that you can keep your mind open, so that you can just, it doesn't shut down on you and start to just
Open,
go away from
curious,
you.
open,
You
curious,
know?
in the moment, with as little as this running around as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, absolutely, it's a lifetime effort. Okay, so Mr. Iyengar was scheduled to be on the podcast with you today. I don't know if you know that, but unfortunately, he passed away 7 years ago.
Yeah, I can't channel.
So, but if he were on the show,
Well, sometimes I think I'm channeling him.
and
That's
you-
my
and
own
you c-
self-delusion.
exactly there you go. So if he were on the show and you can ask him one question or one comment, what would it be?
Well, this is going to sound kind of schmaltzy.
Is that a Sanskrit word, by the way, schmaltzy?
Yeah. I would just have to thank him, really from the bottom of my heart, because I don't know where I'd be without the teachings that I have had. And even though it sounds like I'm just trying to curry favor or whatever, that's how profound it is for me.
For sure.
And the people that he trained that helped me. There's just a profound gratitude for that. And I don't know why I get to have it. I don't feel like I'm particularly deserving of any of it. I just feel like I got to have it. And I'm grateful for that, because what I had to go through, I could have gone, I had just gotten remarried when my son died. 4 months later, after I got married. And I told my new husband, I said, I may never come back from this. And you should just get out of town. And I meant it, because he had lost his wife like 3 years before that from breast cancer. And I was like, you don't want to, this is like, I don't know why you have to be with a bunch of women who go through something horrible, but this is not, I don't think you should do this, because I was really thinking, when I was really talking to him, my mind, I was like, I'm just going to take my bicycle and I'm going to leave. And I don't know when I'm going to come back, basically. And he was like, that's crazy. I would never do that.
Well, you're a different person.
It wasn't even a profound thing. He just was like, that's nutty. Why would I do that? That's crazy. And I feel like, and then my mind, my son also said, you have to take care of Tessa, my daughter. Mm-hmm. And they were both like that, just like, what are you thinking? It's not going to happen. But I feel like even that was because of yoga. That I heard my husband and I heard my son, because I was in a state of mind where I really just wanted to just
Sure.
not be here anymore. So it's the fact that I was able to listen
Listening.
because I had trained my mind for all these years, to do something different.
Not to shut down
Right. Not to stop.
and run.
That's right.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what we have to do if the pain's so great, but little by little through training, we can stay open if we can. And that's why you stayed with it, because you heard the wisdom, from your son. So
There's just that acculturation
yeah,
of the mind that goes on every single day when you step into one of these practices. It could be karate, it could be meditation, it could be anything that challenges you to stop the chatter and go with your first instinct. Because usually your first instinct is just a gut reaction, and then you have to say, why did I have that gut reaction or whatever?
right. Well,
and
sometimes the gut reaction is based on fear, but sometimes the gut reaction is based on truth, and it's up to us to figure out.
Sometimes you're right.
We have to figure out which is
Sometimes
which.
it can be. You're right. For me, it's not been true, but I believe that for lots of people, it is true that they are so in tune with that mind, that accultured mind, that their responses come from that place. I mean, my
Right.
teachers, that definitely happens. They definitely have that, because faced with my intense agony, my teachers were able to just immediately tell me what they thought I should do from a place that came just purely from instinct,
Beautiful.
not from
Right.
thinking
Right.
about
They
it.
understood on a different level what was necessary.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't have that. I don't pretend to have that. But you're right. There are the people who are my teachers do.
Clear. They're clear. Clear as a bell. So big thank you to Mr. Iyengar.
Yes.
What I also love is how at the end of all these yoga classes, karate classes, there's always a gesture to the teacher and also the lineage. I've
Yeah.
noticed that as well. When there is a lineage, some classes they don't have a lineage, so they just say thank you.
That's
But
true.
anyways, it was a wonderful, pure joy having you on the podcast. I hope it wasn't painful. I'm so
I hope
glad.
I was okay at it.
You're A plus, always an A plus, or as a yeah. Just leave it at that. No, absolutely wonderful. I'm glad I had the opportunity to speak with you again, and I look forward to joining you in class.
Thank you, Morty. It was
Okay.
nice. Thank you for
Be well.
inviting me.
Stay
I
safe.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed our talk with Bonnie Szumski. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the It's Not What You Think podcast. That really helps us to continue to produce these episodes and invite other guests from around the world. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to hear any specific guests on the podcast, please share my email, mordylevine@gmail.com, or visit mordylevine.com. Remember, it's not what you think.